What's up, guys? What's up? Hope you can hear me. Welcome to Rukshan On X. Already got some entertaining comments. I'm enjoying myself, just laughing. Aaron says 7K, blah, 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 blah. 7K. Mate, I wish someone was giving me 7K per post. But yeah, you can believe anything you want to believe in this world. But yeah, how you all doing, guys? Welcome to another Rukshan On X stream, Monday. After a very interesting weekend with protests, the March for Australia and the counter protest, the anti-racism protest. I got a lot to talk about with that one. And I might not get into too many news topics because there's a lot of news actually going on, right? And major news as well, if you consider Australia and US relations, with Albanese flying over to the United States of America. In a few hours, we'll have that meeting finally. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and President Donald J. Trump in the Oval Office with the press pack. We've seen Donald Trump previously speak to other world leaders, and it's been fireworks, entertaining. He kind of commands the room. Very interesting for us as Australians to see how our Prime Minister goes. Now, look, I love this country. I love Australia. I'm rooting for Albanese in terms of being an Australian. I want the best outcome for our country, of course. But there is a part of me that knows that there's certain things that, for whatever reason, the leaders in Australia, the opposition in Australia, can't even hold Albanese accountable for. And Donald Trump has this way of holding world leaders accountable for issues, even in their domestic countries. We saw that with the leader of South Africa, for instance. He held him accountable for the killing of white farmers, for instance. And that was very much put him on the spot in that moment. And I think Albanese deserves a little bit of that because, as far as I'm concerned, the media here, the opposition, any kind of person that's involved in politics who's more of the centrist or left-wing persuasion, kind of gives him a free pass on everything. And there's a lot of things I think Anthony Albanese needs to be held to account on. And it's crazy that, we're kind of depending on, as Australians, on Donald J. Trump to bring some of that to the surface. But obviously, it will be a serious discussion. So I think it's about 2 a.m. Australian time tomorrow morning the meeting will take place. So he'll be greeted by Trump, and then they'll enter the Oval Office for a press pack, and they'll probably exchange some words there, and maybe Trump might bring some things up. And then after that, he's joining Trump for a lunch, which should be interesting as well. So, but the reason I'm mentioning all of this is that today at 1:30 a.m., if any of you guys are watching now and you were thinking, I'm going to get up early in the morning for whatever reason, right? You might just love this stuff too much in terms of loving politics and what's going on. And you're getting up at 1:30 or 2 a.m. to watch what's happening. I will be live streaming with Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia. Avi might be jumping on as well from Israel. He's still on the tour in Israel with Tommy Robinson. So he might be jumping on. And we will live stream the meeting between Trump and our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, as well as give commentary and obviously switch between what people are saying. If you guys are up and you're commenting, we'll bring up some of those comments as well. So it'll be an interesting night. I haven't done a, what's the time going to be? Yeah, 2 a.m. stream before. So I don't know how long it's going to go for, but I don't know how tired I'm going to be. So I'm going to keep a lot of that news to actually covering it live and talking about that with Joel Jamal and hopefully Avi Yemeni if he joins us from Israel. So that should be really interesting. So guys, 2 a.m. or 1:30, I think around 1:30 a.m. we'll start our live stream. Melbourne time, Australian time. So that should be fun. But today I'm going to talk a lot about March for Australia, especially because I know it's been covered a lot, but I want to really just, delve into the media coverage of that particular protest, especially around, the incidents that we saw of far left-wing violence and how it's been portrayed. So I think this is a really interesting story there because the omissions made by some of the major networks and even the way that some politicians have reacted to it, including Jacinta Allen, obviously the Victorian Premier, even the opposition. I think it's really interesting to see how they're dealing with all of this because, we saw that very animated press conference from Victoria Police. We don't normally see Victoria Police in that kind of animated stance and actually call out a political ideology in that manner, and especially when it comes to the left. So that was very interesting, and many of us have been talking about that obviously over the last couple of days, but I really want to delve into that and see what that was all about. So that's going to be my main focus. Obviously, guys, your chats are going to show up, and it's great to have you here and being a part of the conversation. I'm going to interact with as many chats as I possibly can at different natural breakpoints. I'm going to bring up some of your comments. If you want to support the show, you can also do super chats. That's available on YouTube. So that's just a way of, supporting the show. I'll definitely be bringing up the super chats as well. So if you really want to get your comment up there and for me to discuss whatever you're talking about, super chat's the way to go. But, I'm pretty liberal. If you watched my shows before, very casual. I love to engage with the comments and have a conversation with you guys as well. And I don't mind the trolls either, as long as you guys keep it respectful. So welcome, my hate watchers. Thank you for helping the algorithm. Thank you for helping with engagement. I appreciate you assisting in this regard because I'm not getting paid $7,000 per post, contrary to popular opinion. It's not even 7,000 rupees per post, as I was telling Avi on a post about Tommy Robinson. It's not even that much, guys. I'm literally, my opinions, my views, they come from my certain ideological views that I might have, and I'm very open about them as well. So if you've been watching me for enough time, you would know what many of those views are. But Tika Bruno, welcome, mate. Yeah, you are early. Oh, perfect. Gap Media says everything's sounding good. When does Avi get back? I don't actually know. So yeah, I guess he'll come back when whatever he's doing in Israel is done. A lot of people want to know when Avi gets back. Yeah, Avi's still in Israel. And then Odin Bale says, out on bail, one thing digital ID would be good for is voting app. We could all vote on all issues and it would be official. Yeah, look, I'm not really a massive fan of, obviously, digital ID. And I'm not really a massive fan of digital voting. I think for federal and state elections, I don't know. Maybe for like council things and stuff like this, perhaps we could explore these ideas. And yeah, like it would have to be a very secure system, which means digital ID, which means it's something that a lot of us don't really support that concept because, I've talked about it on previous shows. But yeah, interesting. Definitely. I mean, voting in a way, I think, does need some reforms, but maybe reforms back to making it more secure by making it less, possible to tamper with the voting, if that makes sense. Samuel says Jesus is Lord. Samuel, welcome to the show. I concur with you. And Paul says Melbourne protest was deserving of a golden Logie. Very entertaining performance by all involved. I'll take that as a statement. I'm definitely going to play some of the Melbourne protest footage that's going around. And Era has said, there is nothing Australian about Albanese. He is anti-Australian, pro-jihadist, communist, parasite. Now, I can probably agree with most of the things that you're saying, Era, for sure. I just think, obviously we want to support our country. And even if we have a crappy leader sometimes, when it comes to, we want the best outcome for Australians. And as much as I love America, we obviously have to work in the interest of our country as well. So when it comes to things like tariffs and, trade deals and things like this, I want to have a good outcome for Australia as well. So in that regard, I support whatever Australian leader bringing those outcomes to people, because ultimately that delivers, whether it's savings or, new opportunities for Australians. And that's always important. So, we shouldn't be fighting against our team as such, but we should definitely hold them accountable. But I do agree with your general assessment of Anthony Albanese. Mate, a lot of people Kevin's asking about Avi as well. A lot of people are missing Avi Yemeni. It's hard to do the opposition podcast when he's not around, but he will be available this tonight, possibly, or early hours in the morning for the stream about the Albanese. He might be jumping on for that. And on that, someone here is staying up. Yeah, look, I think, you can probably obviously catch up with it everything in the morning. It'll be all over the news. It'll be the number one topic of news discussion in Australia tomorrow morning, that meeting with Albanese and Trump. But there is something to watching it live, being the first amongst all of our other citizens or, compatriots in this country to see our Prime Minister deal with Donald J. Trump, because this has been in the works for so long. This particular meeting has been a massive thing. So definitely make sure you're up. And if you're up, again, remember, join our live stream that we're doing around 1:30 a.m. Yes, it will be live. Yeah, 2 a.m. Melbourne time is the official start, I believe. That lines up with around 9 a.m. in Washington, D.C. And Paul says you don't need Avi Rooks. I wonder what they will eat for lunch. Interesting, yeah. I wonder if Albo will take a pack of his beers. I don't know if you guys remember, but when he was meeting with Keir Starmer at, the equivalent of the Oval Office or the White House in the UK, Downing Street, he took a what do you call them, a 6-pack or whatever of Albo beer. I don't know what he's going to bring into Trump, but let's see. Politicians are all crooks. Yeah, there's something to be said about that for sure. Like, as in, I would agree with most of that sentiment. But yeah, guys, let's jump into it. I'll get back to some of your comments a little bit later as well. Would you ever have Andrew Tate on your show? Look, I'm open to having many different people on my show. I don't think Andrew Tate would ever do a show as lowly and as little as mine. But yeah, if he were to come on a political issue, I would have him on. But I think, like someone here has said, Tate is a human trafficking criminal. I mean, he's a dubious character. Obviously, he's controversial. Now, he pleads his innocence, but there's a lot of people on all political persuasions that has a lot of issues with Andrew Tate. I'm not a particularly like a fan of Andrew Tate or anything like this. I think regardless of any of the criminality and the things that people allege about him, the way he carries on about his views, I think, especially against women and things like this, and the fact that he kind of switches religions and does all these kind of weird things, it's just like, I don't know. I think there's something not quite right there. He's a bit of a showman, and that's not a bad thing. He's an entertainer. He knows what he's doing, and he's very effective. Well, he has been very effective. These days, he's not really. There was a time period that Andrew Tate was a very kind of prominent presence online, but now we have even more wackier people that have taken that place. So there is that. So let's get to the God. Gigi says, Rukshan, Australia first or Israel first? I am 100% Australia first in terms of, the nation, my country, my home, the place that I love. So definitely Australia first. I would not, I don't even have dual nationality or anything. I'm just an Australian citizen. Nothing, no dual. I don't believe in those kind of concepts. People have asked me these questions. I don't even if I had to weigh up between Australia and Sri Lanka, it's Australia. It's like Australia. It's just Australia. So it's ridiculous to ask me about Israel like this. And beyond all of that, I've been more kind of transparent and open about my faith as well. So I would say that, it's all about the kingdom of God for me and Jesus Christ. So with that in mind, definitely, as someone who's living in this world, the nations, my nation is Australia. But there is more. There is more out there for sure. I don't have a Bugatti yet. I don't think I'd buy a Bugatti. I'm more of a Rolls Royce type of individual. But yeah, enough of that. Let me get to the first news story. I'll pull it up. And this is the March for Australia. So I don't know if anyone watching here went to the March for Australia. Put it in the comments if you guys went to the March for Australia. I'll definitely try to bring up some of those comments. But I actually missed this March for Australia because I was at church that day and I had to attend like a baptism. So it was important to be there. So I couldn't attend the March for Australia this time to cover it. But when I finished up at church and came back home and I looked at what was happening in terms of the coverage of it, it was very interesting. And interesting to the extent of, we do see a lot of protest activity here in Victoria, here in Melbourne. It's well known for being the protest capital of Australia, probably the Southern Hemisphere, maybe even the world in some regards in terms of just how many issue protests that we have in our state, right? But, I wasn't shocked to see the violence from the far left. They are very well known for violence, and their whole mantra is around, especially when they're counter-protesting, is about bringing violence and intimidating groups. And, anyone that doesn't agree with them, we're going to protest against you and we're going to use force, we're going to use violence, we're going to try to intimidate you. And these are all like, scrawny little nerdy looking, left-wing rat bags, a lot of these guys. Yes, there's some intimidating figures in there as well, but they're far and few in between. All right, most of them are dressed these days. Their attire is all black, hoodies, right? They've got the kafaya as well. They've got the traditional Palestinian Hamas attire as well sometimes. And it's a motley crew of just the lowlifes of our society, really, that come as these counter protests to actually stop the voices of others that have views in our state, right? So they get to protest every single weekend, do whatever, no one goes to stop their protests, right? Even if they do, it's not with violence, it's just a counter protest. It's very peaceful, right? They're allowed to carry out their particular ideological protests week in, week out in this state, facilitated by the police. But the moment you dare, have a different view, they will come up with any reason or any excuse to target you with violence. And of course, they will target the very police who have been facilitating their protests for years now, especially when you consider the constant pro-Palestine protests that a lot of these people that are part of this far left in Victoria attend, take part in organizing and marshal as well. So, there's a lot to be garnered from kind of dissecting about what these groups are fighting for, right? What they're pushing for, what their agenda is, what their narrative is. And now the way that the media and the police have responded to this, as well as the takeaways we can get from what the political leaders have said. So that's what I'm going to be spending today's show on, mostly covering that. So let's first have a look at this article from Sky News, and I'm going to play then the news stories which are in question. So this is from Sky, And it says major free-to-air news outlets misleads Melburnians over violent protests as police blame left-wing groups for attacks on cops. A major free-to-air network has been accused of misleading viewers over its biased coverage of the Melbourne protest after police blasted left-wing groups for attacking cops. The 7 and 9 network have been slammed for appearing to obfuscate I just kind of struggled to say that word. Obfuscate and lie about who's committing violence at the Melbourne riots over the weekend. Hundreds of people demonstrating against mass migration gathered on the steps of Parliament House in Melbourne just before midday on Sunday before marching through the surrounding streets. March for Australia demonstrators also took place in capital cities on Sunday, including Sydney, where at least 5,000 protesters marched to the CBD. Speaking at a press conference later on Sunday, Victoria Police Northwest Metro Region Commander Wayne Cheeseman unleashed on those he said were responsible for the violence. This is what was thrown at police today, and I think Melbourne has had a gutful, he said, while dumping the box of rocks on the floor. The left-wing groups are running up and down side streets. We are lucky we had barriers and police in place, but they were desperately trying to get to the March for Australia group, who was for a long time static at Parliament House. So I think it's important, and I know I've talked about this before, but I'm going to bring up this video of the police press conference, and I'm just going to play the first minute or so to see exactly what Victoria Police said at that press conference. So let's have a watch of that.
This is what was thrown at police today, and I think Melbourne has had a gutful. I look on the social media streaming platforms of some of these issue-motivated groups that are saying police used excessive force. The fact was, these were being thrown at police. Bottles filled with shards of glass were being thrown at the police. Rotten fruit was being thrown at police. Bins were put on fire. Flags were on fire. And I think, really enough's enough. The disruption to Melbourne, to the general public who want to come into our fine city, the disruption to businesses, we really need to find an answer of what we do. These are people who come, they're not coming to protest. I heard the Chief Commissioner talk about protesters having compassion and care for others. This is certainly not what has been displayed today. People came to pick a fight with the police. The people that came to pick the fight with police were the issue-motivated groups on the left. I can tell you that the March for Australia group, they were peaceful, they were engaging, they listened to our instructions, they did what they were told, and they protested by example. The other group, and there were a number of issue-motivated groups known to us, we knew they were coming. We had to deploy hundreds of police. These hundreds of police,
So I'll stop there. You saw the dramatic, it's pretty dramatic. I mean, obviously, you might think it's not, but normally we don't see a press conference where the police, constable, inspector, whoever's speaking, comes up with a rock and shows what was thrown at them and things, and speaks in this manner after a protest. And we've had violent protests in the past before, especially with the left. But having said that, some important points to take away from what he said, and he specifically labeled the agitators of the violence, right? That's what's so important. He specifically labeled these left-wing groups. He called them left-wing motivated or left-motivated groups with left-leaning ideologies, whatever. However you framed it, he specified specifically. There was no doubt about it being left-wing groups that were responsible for this violence. And then he went further to actually differentiate between those groups that were committing violence and the March for Australia group, which was the main, rally or protest, however you want to say it, as being exemplary, as being well-behaved, as following police instructions and not causing any drama for the police. So he made it very clear this is coming from the police sources. So it's a very, whatever you may think of the police, it is a, authoritative source, at least for the media itself. It's not just like some random on the street saying this. The police are putting it out there in a media conference and saying this group committed violence on the left, this other group, let's say a right-wing group, March for Australia, and people might disagree with that way that I've described it, but I'm just doing it for illustrative purposes. They were peaceful. Now, how did Channel 7, right? How did Channel 7 decide to cover this to the wider Australian public? Because remember, this matters. We're only talking about this because as people that follow politics, if you're on X, if you're kind of, in that space, you're watching very closely these little details, right? The little minutiae of, the things that are discussed online when it comes to these things. But the wider public, right? The majority of Australians that watch the news media, where they get, the information from, they are being given what happened on the day, right? Especially showing the pictures of police at the press conference, right? This is what they're getting shown by the media. So it's important then, when we look at the national discussion around this issue of mass immigration, of how these things are portrayed. So let's have a look at Channel 7, the little video they put up initially, and I'll give you some of my thoughts, and then we'll look at Channel 9 as well.
It's thrown at police today, and I think this is what was thrown at police today, and I think Melbourne has had a gutful. I look on the social media streaming platforms of some of these issue-motivated groups that are saying police used excessive force. The fact was, these were being thrown at police. Bottles filled with shards of glass were being thrown at the police. Rotten fruit was being thrown at police. Bins were put on fire. Flags were on fire. And I think, really enough's enough. The disruption to Melbourne, to the general public who want to come into our fine city, the disruption to businesses, we really need to find an answer of what we do.
So I don't know if you noticed that, but they pretty much edited out the police explaining to the public which group was responsible for the violence. And the note that they have says, a frustrated Victorian police officer has taken aim at protesters in Melbourne after rocks were thrown at police during the March for Australia. It comes after 2 officers were hospitalised after clashing with protesters at the anti-immigration rally. Get the full story on 7 News at 6 p.m. So you have to put that text that they've written there, and then the omissions that they've put, in the actual video, where they've taken out the fact of the police specifying who did it. And in that text, it tells you the frustrated Victorian police officer has taken aim at protesters. That could mean any number of protesters in Melbourne after rocks were thrown at police during the March for Australia. So they don't differentiate between the counter protest and the March for Australia rally. No, it's during the March for Australia, rocks were thrown at the police. And then it goes on to say that 2 officers were hospitalized after clashing with protesters. Again, doesn't tell you the groups of protesters or what protesters. It's just that it's an anti-immigration rally, right? So all roads at that particular moment in that text point towards the March for Australia protesters. And then, to top all of that off, you can say, oh, well, that was just a text, they're going to show you in the video. No, in the video, what do they show you? They show you the police, they omit that information that the policeman gave. So why? Like, how hard would it have been, right? They got more time. This video is only 1 minute 51. You can make these short reels, whatever, 3 minutes long these days, or longer even. How hard is it to put in that very specific key part of information about who were the protesters that threw the rocks, right? And it's not even from a random. It's from the very same person that they've got on the screen there. So look, it seems to have done deliberately, in a way to portray people in a certain way. Maybe they made a mistake, right? Maybe it was the intern that was working, because it becomes more fascinating when they deleted this particular post after they got criticism, an hour or so into it, and they put up another one that wasn't even that, that didn't really explain it either. It's like the media were trying to find ways to hide the fact that there was left-wing violence and portray it in a manner that, for whatever reason, this March for Australia group came out, and it's because of them, police had rocks thrown at them. I think it's disgraceful. It's disgusting. 7 News has been called out for it. they should, if there's any kind of broadcasting authority, people should put in complaints to this about Channel 7, because this is the most dishonest way of showing news to the public. And we already know about the fake news media. We know they're capable of doing this. They do this all the time. But this is so blatant this time to take or to omit specific details and then just try to portray one group in that light. Because it's a very heated topic, right? I get it. It's a very heated topic. Immigration issues right now in Australia is massively a divisive topic. But then to portray people that are at that march wrongly, in this instance, as being aggressors that are throwing rocks at police, is just disgusting. So, definitely it's good that they have been called out online, and the media has also reported on it. Whether Channel 7 has reflected on that in the after coverage in the news, let's just have a look at what they said later on that night.
Is fuming tonight, drawing a line in the sand after a shameful Sunday of violent protests in the heart of the city. The riot squad was pelted with large rocks and shards of glass, leaving 2 officers so badly injured they needed treatment in hospital.
Shoppers and tourists were also caught up in the afternoon anarchy, with claims some protesters arrived only on a mission to hurt police as the force declares enough is enough. Jordan Quinn begins our coverage.
Our city in chaos. As police are pushed to their limits to disperse violent counter-protesters.
This is what was thrown at police today.
That was actually better. They said violent counter-protesters at least. Let's keep watching.
And I think Melbourne had had a gutful.
It followed what was supposed to be a peaceful protest on the steps of Parliament House as hundreds gathered for the March for Australia rally.
Oh, we are young and free.
There, protesting against mass immigration.
Hundreds of thousands of people coming in, I'm not against immigration, I'm just against mass immigration,
For the kids, I just fear for their future.
The March for Australia group, they were peaceful.
Another group hunting them down, met by barricades at every turn. But
they put that in. I think Channel 7 really copped it online. And the broadcast that happened a few hours later on the evening news, they've clarified all of those things. Let's keep watching.
Tensions boiled over, their anger turning towards police. Hundreds of officers were pushed to their limits to protect the city and themselves.
We deployed force against these people, and rightly so.
Officers were forced to use 50 rounds of pepper spray, 4 flashbangs, 2 stinger balls, and even rubber bullets. Tourists watched on in shock.
We're just wandering through the park and heard all this commotion and what the hell's going on here?
I thought it was like a gunshot or something. We're trying to get to the MCG, but it's very confronting having all those people coming towards you.
I mean, I get that the city's on standstill, but we've got to show that power in numbers, people.
2 police officers were hospitalised.
I have a sergeant, a female sergeant, who went to hospital with a suspected broken hand because she was kicked at. I have a member with a nasty gash on his leg.
The city burning left police fuming.
That's not a small rock. We had our port members who come out with their riot gear and their shields. These rocks were cracking some of those shields today. So they're being thrown with force. They're being thrown with the view to harm our members. They're cowards. They come in face coverings. They come in masks. They come with hoodies on. Yes, some of them are professional protesters who certainly don't come to protest. They come to fight. I don't think the members should be target practice for people who want to hurt us. We are there, like I said, to try and keep...
So that's the Channel 7 news report. So you can see later on they actually corrected a lot of the inaccuracies, I would say, that originally was a part of the report when they first published it. Now, again, I think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that people called them out online. Let's get to some of your comments now regarding what I've just been talking about for the past 15 minutes. First, I want to bring up the super chat from Anthony Madison. Mate, thank you. Super chat, newsflash, Trump's fault. You always come through, mate, with Trump's fault. I don't know what's going on, but I love the fact that I always get to read your super chat and it's always Trump's fault. And we'll see tonight, or early hours in the morning, what happens and how Trump handles Albanese. So that should be really interesting. All right, let's have a look at some of your comments around this. We've got here from Arthur saying F7 News. Jacinta Allen supports Antifa because it suits her agenda to diminish white people. I'll take that as a statement for now, mate, because I'm going to actually play you Jacinta Allen's reaction to this. We got here from Space Tardigrade. Thanks for your comment, mate. Love your work, by the way. Appreciate it. Karen is watching from the Netherlands. Wow, amazing. Thank you for joining from the Netherlands. Police are crying boo-hoo. Look, I know police has a interesting relationship with Victorians, and I'm not a massive fan of Victoria policing or their leadership. But that doesn't mean that individual members of the police force, who are members of the community, should be harmed in a deliberate manner to injure or maim them while they are doing the job of facilitating, peaceful protests. Essentially, that's what they're trying to do, ensure that the rest of the community is safe. If there was not a risk to the rest of the community, they wouldn't be there. It's not even about keeping the protesters safe per se, in the sense of we just don't know what happens when these groups might get together and clash and fight. If other people that, tourists or members of the public who are going about their day-to-day lives in the city of Melbourne, if a rock that's thrown at another protester misses them, someone ducks down and someone sitting at a cafe having lunch has their head smashed open by a rock. So the police have to be there to protect the public, maintain order, and facilitate this right that we have to protest. But in that process, that doesn't mean that they should get harmed or injured in a deliberate manner. That should always be called out. Jack Daniel says, if they ever gain power, I can't wait for you to be deported. FO. I think you're saying the March for Australia group, if they ever gain power. And look, there are certain right-wing elements in those marches that obviously online talk about deporting me all the time. But people have a right to protest. People have a right to have views about immigration. Australians, it is their right to have views, even strong views about immigration. So whether it impacts me or not, whether I don't agree with it or not, they have a right to protest. If you believe that people in this country have a right to protest in the name of Hamas, like we've been seeing for years now, then they have a right to protest in this country in the name of issues that are important to them in Australia. People might have views regarding me, and I've seen some of those extreme views, but it's got nothing. This is not about me. So I support people's right to protest in a peaceful manner, or even on things that I don't agree with. Got one from Ness. Thanks for joining the show, Ness. Agree, Rukshan. They have cost the state of Victoria taxpayers $25 million. There are people living in tents all over regional Victoria, along the rivers and in parks. If they think they can make a real world change, get on a plane and fly over to Gaza. I think you're talking about the weekly protest that we have here in Victoria. And they have actually said recently that there's going to be a ceasefire in the protests. And this is from one of the organizers, and they're going to cut back. So let's just see what happens. But you saw during the March for Australia, the counter protesters came in their pro-Palestinian gear as well. The marching route was set out by Vic Paul like a sheep race away from Government House. And Paul, we've got here, R.D. Wollstonecroft says, the left really effed up yesterday. This cop was fantastic. Totally owns them. And there is actually something to be said about this police officer as well. Like, we've become used to not hearing from like masculine, powerful, angry voices from our police. Like, it's very kind of PC, politically correct when they talk, and it's a lot more guarded. They try to be really sophisticated with their language, and it's just good to hear raw talk from a guy. Obviously, he looks like a tough policeman. I think he's been in the force for like 40 years. Yeah, it's a pretty badass image. He's holding a rock like this. It's become kind of a meme. But, we want to hear our police force have control, have authority, and in the interest of the public, right? And there are some complaints of people saying, well, they're only complaining because this time it impacted them, right? What about all the other times when they went into that, we had the pro-Palestinians going into that Israeli restaurant in Victoria and smashing it up because, whatever's happening overseas? Where was this kind of strong condemnation from the police? And those are valid criticisms I think we can make about the police, but it's still refreshing to see someone like this, because this is kind of our expectations, at least, right, of what we think about authority and police. And I'm not making generalizations here. I'm just saying, because we're so used to seeing, police kind of in like rainbow lanyards and talking very airy-fairy and being very PC. It's good to actually just see them talking straight, is probably the best way to put it. William says, throwing rocks versus rubber bullets, both are wrong. I definitely agree that throwing rocks is wrong, and shooting rubber bullets can also be wrong. I think there are times, obviously, that the force, violent force is available to the police. I think the police are very patient. And there have been times where I believe I've personally seen them use rubber bullets when it hasn't been called for on peaceful protesters. These protesters that they targeted were not being peaceful and were escalating from the footage that I've seen, and they came prepared with these type of weapons. And these are rocks, I believe they're saying, collected from in between train tracks. So these people came prepared, they had bags of these, and it was very violent the way they did that. So, I've seen police cop a lot of abuse as they're working, just kind of standing in front of people, and people abuse them, yell at them, say a lot of these things. They're very restrained in Victoria. I know they use pepper spray from time to time. But in this particular instance, from what I've seen, the extremist violence from the far left, it had to be checked because there was a really, very real threat to the public when they start throwing these type of things out there. And you could kill someone with this type of projectile. You could hit a little kid. There were families there. So, the police have a duty to protect the public. And that's why, they're allowed to use force in certain instances. Again, if they've done something wrong, they should be held to account. But from what I've seen in this instance, I think they were acting within, the powers that they have to keep the public safe from these far left extremists, who I think really should be designated, like they want to do in America, as a terrorist organization when it comes to Antifa proper. Now, there's lots of discussion around what Antifa is. They're just anti-fascist, and there's no organizational lead and all these things. All right, whatever. I get what you're trying to say, and this is what they hide behind. But there is a extremist element and extremist movement here in Australia that's growing as well. And if we get on top of them early, at least, I think it's going to bode well for the future of this country, because far left extremism is rising unchecked. It's risen unchecked in America for a long time, to the point where we have a lot of violence now from the far left. And same thing's happening in Australia. Like, no one really wants to address it. And to that point, I actually want to bring up Jacinta Allen's response to this. So let me just pull that up. So this video is clipped by Australians versus the Agenda. Let's just have a look at this little 1 minute clip from Jacinta Allen responding to what we saw in the videos we've watched before.
What we saw yesterday was a different pattern of behaviour to those examples. It was a very, very different set of people coming to the city with the view of engaging in violence quite clearly, which is why, as we saw from the police press conference, they came with missiles to hurl at police. Now, those people will be dealt with by the law, and I thank Victoria Police for the work that they are doing. Well, what we saw yesterday is, for some, they are choosing to protest for the sake of protesting, and whilst that very important tenet of our democratic society is the right to protest, what comes with that is an obligation to do so safely. And what was clear yesterday was, for some, a small number, they chose to come and bring violence to the streets. And I want to thank Victoria Police for the way they kept the community safe and dealt swiftly with this group of protesters who were choosing to use violence. And it was unacceptable acceptable. What we saw that was perpetrated on the men and women of Victoria Police who were there to keep the community safe.
Still stand by the fact that Melbourne CBD is safe?
Well, it should not be repeated, but I will repeat that yes, Melbourne's CBD is safe. What we saw yesterday...
I'll just let it play in the background. But the last comment is very telling when she's like, "Oh, Melbourne CBD is safe." I don't think Melbourne CBD is safe. You know, last week we talked about the stabbing of that woman just walking down the street, and that random, crazed looking junkie comes and stabs and runs away. There's a lot of issues in Melbourne, and it's definitely, I wouldn't say it's safe in the way that government tries to portray it. But back to the news at hand with this particular protest, you can see Jacinta Allen. She kind of doesn't touch on the ideological views of this protest group, even though the police have. And, she's very airy-fairy about it. I don't know if you've seen previous statements that, governments, the Labor government have made. Even Jacinta Allen, after we've seen, things at protest, for instance, they're very specific about, the rise of this, the rise of the right wing, and they do investigations, and, they get very passionate about it. I remember after the Let Women Speak rally, and the NSN came, and, they fought with the trans people, they did the Nazi salute, and then you had, people blaming the women that were there and so on. And Daniel Andrews went up the next day and he put up the trans flag, so they're very determined, Labor, when it's a certain political view, to fight back and push back against it. But Jacinta Allen is very careful in her language. She doesn't want to upset her supporters, right? She doesn't want to upset people who are a part of the kind of Labor left green type voting base that Labor kind of depends on, and pushes their social issues as well. So for her, these are pretty much, I would say, in my opinion, these particular violent individuals are kind of like in that mix, right? These kind of socialists, these unionists, these Marxists, communists, whatever, Antifa, like these groups have always been a part of the Labor fold. And, this is kind of their, public, the front lines of their violent protest groups that are enacting this type of violence against the police. So I think she's being very careful. And she knows exactly who's responsible, what groups are responsible. They never investigate these groups. I remember when mums and dads, a mix of all types of people were marching during COVID. What did they do? They said, "Oh, we're going to have an investigation into the far right, the rise of the far right. We're going to hold an inquest. We're going to hold an inquiry. We're going to put together a report." This was the Greens. Have you heard anything from the Greens about these protests? Have you heard any kind of words, even though that they were being violent towards the public and the police? No, you've heard jack shit. So, these are useful idiots of these political groups. They'll protect them. And that's very much a part of the problem, because they help these groups grow. They feel invincible. And then we get to this point where, we have violence to this extent. And it's only going to get worse, is my view. I did have also the, while I read your comments, before I read your comments, I want to play this interview from 3AW just to show you the mindset of these protest organizers, because that's important as well. They don't think they've done anything wrong. In fact, they think they're justified in everything they're doing. And these people sound ridiculous. They sound entitled. And frankly, I think their worldview is dangerous. So let's play this interview from Tom Elliott. Actually, maybe I'll read your comments first, because there's a lot of comments that have come through. I'll get to those now. Just give me a second. Let's have a look before I play the interview. We've got a super chat here. This is from Ishan Chad. Rook, what are your thoughts on the Vietnam War? Oh, maybe can I come back to that at the end, mate? Because that deviates a lot from this. I do have some views on the Vietnam War, actually. But yeah, I think I'll come back to that one. How about that? All right, let's play this. Let's play this thing, and I'll save some comments.
Almost all our business expenses earn Velocity points.
Not just flights.
Nope.
Points for fuel and rideshare?
Yes. Join
We'll let 3AW play their ad.
Virgin Australia Business Flyer and earn Velocity points with our entire network of partners. Membership, Velocity T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Well, our next guest was the organiser of yesterday's so-called anti-racism counter-protest. Annika, good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
I just want to play you something. This is what Police Commander Wayne Cheeseman had to say yesterday.
Melbourne had a gutful. People came to pick a fight with the police. The people that came to pick the fight were the issue-motivated groups on the left.
Well, I think he's talking about your group. Did you come to pick a fight with police?
No, we came to put a political message of opposition to racism that was on display from the far-right protesters at the front of Parliament House. The organiser, Matt Tree, who's part of...
I just want to pause that there because that's one of the organisers there saying that they didn't come for a fight with the police, which makes me wonder. It doesn't make sense that if they didn't come with that kind of intention, how do they have these type of effigies already pre-made of Victoria Police? All right, I'm playing this video here. So how do you square that up, right? They had these effigies of Victoria Police. Yeah, they could have drawn it on the spot. Who knows? But they're burning members of Victoria Police in this effigy. Again, things that you see in the third world. These kind of terroristic ways of protesting, burning things. You can see the Palestinian flag or something like that flying in the background as well. Actually, no, it's a different flag. They've got Aboriginal flag there as well. But yeah, they're burning an effigy of the police. I just wanted to show you that first, and also actually, I think it's also important to show the posters that they were putting around everywhere. Right, this is what the posters that they were sticking up. Build a bright future for trans kids. Throw a brick at a cop today. Okay, so keep those two things in mind as you're listening to this far left, unhinged, cooked activist talking.
Melbourne had a gutful. People came to pick a fight with the police. The people that came to pick the fight were the issue-motivated groups on the left.
Well, I think he's talking about your group. Did you come to pick a fight with police?
No, we came to put a political message of opposition to racism that was on display from the far-right protesters at the front of Parliament House. The organiser, Matt Tree, who's part of the National Workers Alliance, who has a close relationship with known Nazis in this town, who has said that he wants to defend European blood and has said that immigration poses an existential threat. So we came to protest against the vile, hateful racism of the so-called March for Australia demonstrators.
Okay, but Wayne Cheeseman says some of your members came armed with rocks. The people were seen burning Australian flags, that they were burning effigies of police. Was that really necessary?
Well, I think that the better question to ask is why did Cheeseman use his opportunity in front of the media to praise people who organised a demonstration that was calling for the banning of immigration of black and brown.
Well, no. What he said was he said that they obeyed the rules that the police had set, that they were peaceful.
He went out of his way to praise the demonstrators who were calling for a ban on immigration.
All right. Why the violence, though, from your side? Why throw rocks at police?
I'm not here to talk about the actions of individuals. I said that to your producer when they called me this morning.
But would you at least condemn it? Would you at least condemn the violence?
I'm not condemning anything. I think the question is the wrong question to be asking. The better question to be asking is why has the police got access to actually weapons that have record of lethality? Why are the police so violent towards people who are exercising their democratic right to protest, and why did the police commander go out of his way to praise a racist, fascistic demonstration that took place out the front of the Parliament House?
Okay, well, I'll speak for the police, even though I'm not a police officer. One is they praised the Australia First, or as you call it, the pro-racist, the anti-immigration protest, simply for, by and large, obeying the rules. And they specifically called out your counter-protest as not obeying the rules. People wearing masks, that's illegal now. People throwing rocks at police, that's definitely illegal. So that's what he was angry about.
Pete, I just stopped at that. You have to give these people airtime because you have to listen to this. the public needs to hear that they see nothing wrong with the violence that they've committed. One, they make all manner of excuses. They completely, misconstrue the role of police in that particular protest. Like she's saying, she's complaining that they were praising the ideological views of the March for Australia. I never heard the police do that at any point, right? And they've spoken out against the March for Australia the previous time because of issues that they had with certain members of the NSN. So I've never seen the police really do it in that way. What the police said was that the March for Australia group listened to their instructions. So for that reason, they were good for obeying police instructions and not becoming a public nuisance and protesting in the correct manner, right? And this particular individual has taken offense to that, saying that's the police supporting them. And, this just shows you why it was justified that maybe some people would have attacked them. It's just complete lunacy, but we need to hear it. We need to hear from these lunatics because they are amongst us and they're a part of this movement. They're a part of these groups. A lot of them are part of the pro-Palestinian movement that's organizing this chaos in our city. And we need to hear from what these people think and how they think about, protest rights in Australia.
And rightly so.
Yeah, well, what I'm angry about is the normalisation of extreme racism that's taking place in our society right now. Barnaby Joyce, saying he's going to join One Nation. Andrew Hastie putting forward a play for leadership inside the Liberal Party, trying to bring Trumpian mega politics into our
and you're entitled to do that. You're entitled to do that. But a police officer had her arm broken yesterday by being kicked, apparently, by someone
A protester has had to go to hospital to get shrapnel out of their legs from the flashbang grenades that the police officers used.
Yes, but the police are legally allowed to use limited violence if people are disobeying the law.
But what's happening at the moment is a normalisation of these types of violent weaponry from the police. They have pepper spray foam, which can cause chemical burns. They have rubber bullets. They have rubber bullets that are metal.
Yeah, I thought that was funny, like how she went into, the Liberal Party might have more Trumpian politics. Like, that's why we're angry. And, these are the reasons that we're like being violent. Like, really?
Inside of them. They have stunner grenades, they have flashbang grenades, all of which have caused permanent injury in countries like Australia and around the world. And Amnesty International is saying that these weaponries should be banned across the globe.
But the police wouldn't need to use them if protesters didn't turn violent. I mean, that is the issue here.
I think that the police have, they targeted the protesters who came to say that racism isn't welcome in our town, and they facilitated a Nazi march through the streets. They facilitated a Nazi march through Burke Street after they used flashbang grenades to move protesters opposing racism out of the city.
But the police are not there to judge the merits or otherwise of the issues on which groups like yours choose to protest. His comments were simply based on who obeyed the rules and who was violent towards police. That's all. He's not saying Nazis good, anti-racist bad or anything like that. He's simply saying who obeyed the rules and who did.
I'll pause it here. I'll just answer Catherine's question because I think it's important. Did this nutcase care or comment when rubber bullets were used in 2021? What I saw during 2021, the left celebrated the police, right? Not just the left. Everyone excused at that time when rubber bullets were shot at members of the public. And there was nothing like this to warrant the police doing that. The only thing that people had done wrong at that time was daring to actually protest in the first place, right? Because of obviously the restrictions and the lockdowns, and they kind of made all of those things illegal because, you couldn't publicly gather and so on. But, did Australians at that time gather with rocks and effigies of police and burn effigies of cops and stick up signs saying to throw rocks at cops and bring rocks to throw at the police? Predominantly, 99% of the crowds that were there at those particular protests were very peaceful, but they were targeted by police using those weapons as a intimidation tactic to ensure that people wouldn't protest anymore. So you wouldn't come to next week's protest, or so the protest movements wouldn't grow. They wanted to show that footage on the televisions to intimidate people at home. So it's a very different use of force by police at that time. I don't believe that it was warranted at that time, and that's why a lot of people spoke out against it. Now, even today, at protests, if people are being peaceful here in Australia, police should be not getting violent whatsoever if they're being peaceful. But as soon as you start turning violent, as soon as you start, throwing rocks at police or members of the public or trying to, she's very clearly says here that she's got an issue with the March for Australia. She says that her anti-racism counter protest is all about stopping Trumpism and all these things. And what this group essentially wants to do is get to the March for Australia protesters and bash them, throw rocks at them, take their flags, attack them. That's what she wants to do. So the police have to step in at that point and prevent that from happening. Now, was that happening during COVID times? Was there counter protests and things like this that were going to clash and things like this? Not really. These were people that just wanted to peacefully protest during that time. Didn't really want to have any interactions with the police, to be honest. At that time, people didn't really want to interact with police. But the police came there and they wanted to ensure that people would not show up for the next protest. So they used violence on purpose and just shot people just standing there just to scare people and put that footage out there so other people would think twice about joining that particular groundswell movement against the police at that time. Let's keep playing the recording.
What did his press conference achieve? His press conference achieved the media spending, hours and hours talking about so-called problematic activists on the left instead of the hate politics that was being spewed by these people at the front of Parliament House.
But you seem to be saying, though, that your issue means that you can behave in any way that you want.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that what is going on is...
That's exactly what she's saying. That's exactly what these left-wing lunatics always... That's why they think they have a free license to do whatever they want, right? So look, I don't agree with a lot of the far left-wing protests that happen in our state in Victoria. I don't agree with people supporting Hamas, for instance, but I think the authorities should deal with that. I think we need to have policies that deal with that. I don't believe it is my role to go out there and start attacking these people for having stupid ideas and stupid views. That's not how Australia should work. That's not how our democracy should work. People have a right to have stupid ideas in this country and protest for stupid things. And when I say stupid things, I mean to the extent of we have people marching through our streets here, holding the flags of foreign terrorist groups which are banned in our country. If you want to talk about it in a practical sense, like a sensible manner, that I would think, yes, as Australians, we should defend our country against these type of foreign terrorist elements and take them out on the streets, because at the end of the day, they're supporting a foreign terrorist group that wants to kill us and hates our way of life. But the reason that we have, enjoy our freedoms and these rights and things is because there's a layer in between that where it's up to the police to maintain that public order. We don't take those matters into our own hands, whatever we may feel. And, the left doesn't think that. These far left organizations, they don't think that. They think they can sidestep all of those things, and they're the ones that are going to give justice to the issues. They're the ones that are going to throw rocks and beat people up and scare them from coming out and push their particular worldview and nonsense. It needs to be pushed back against. Let's keep watching.
A sort of facilitated attack on left-wing protesters who want to stand up against racism, who want to stand up against...
No, it's an attack on protesters who are violent.
No, I think that Cheeseman participated in a media theatre display to try and cast the protesters who were standing up against racism in a bad light.
So you're saying that the police have got it in for you, that they're unfairly targeting you or maligning you?
Well, listen to the language that Cheeseman uses, issue-motivated groups. How are the neo-Nazis not issue-motivated
No,
groups?
he said issue-motivated groups on the left. He was calling out your group of protesters as being violent. Now, I don't have much truck with either side of what went on yesterday, but the police said that the other side, the protest, was relatively peaceful, but your counter-protest was violent. And he had a box full of rocks and things he said had been thrown at police.
I think that the way that we win against the racism and the fascism on the side of the people out the front of Parliament House yesterday is through mass movements that mobilise people in opposition to these types of politics.
Peaceful mass movements.
Yeah, to demoralise them from...
So speaking about mass movements, I don't know if you remember when the first March for Australia happened, there was a guy called Purple Pingers, and he put out a video, he put out a call for a mobilization. Let's have a listen to the words that he used.
The only thing that'll drive the fascists off the streets are militant and mass counter-mobilisations. Like those that drove out the True Blue crew, those that drove to mobilisation. Drive the fascists off the streets are militant
mobilization. So again, I just want to drive home that point. When they use words like militant mobilization, they are saying direct action that involves things like what we saw on the weekend. So in my opinion, so that's kind of when they use this type of language and very publicly state these things. Put two and two together. What do you think that these groups that are going there are aiming to do and have done now? I think it's very serious, and these individuals and these groups should be investigated. Far left-wing violence in Australia should be checked, should be investigated. It should be raising the same eyebrows and the same concern for our politicians as what they claim is the most dangerous thing in the world. More than anything else is the far right and far right extremism. And there is some elements to that where we have seen extremism on the far right or in the fringes of that. Fair. Okay, investigate that, look into that, whatever. But look into your backyard as well, right? A lot of these politicians, these are your people. These are your groups. Look into them as well, because we can actually see them. It's not just talk. We actually see them committing acts of violence. And, it's so obvious that they're being protected. And it's a shame that we have to kind of go out there and call these out and waste our time, trying to show how these groups are violent, because it's so obvious when they find the smallest thing on the right, the smallest thing that a conservative has said or done. All right, God forbid there was some March for Australia protester holding a rock or threw a rock or something. The bloody Prime Minister would have maybe cut his trip short and made a full press statement about that. He might have not wasted time today talking about Diwali, right, the Indian Festival of Lights. He might have released a press conference, had a press conference on far-right violence in Australia. Like, that is what we're dealing with here. So these issues have to be addressed. I'm not just trying to, hype things up and speak in hyperbole. I actually believe there is a real threat from the far left being unchecked to the point of where they build momentum and start actually using violence for their political causes. And we've seen that in the past, but we're seeing it more and more expressed on the streets of Melbourne. Let's hear from the Police Association and what they had to say during a press conference.
Organisers of the anti-fascist element of yesterday's protest put out a statement late yesterday saying that police attacked members of their march. What's your response to that interpretation of what happened yesterday?
And nobody believes you. You have no credibility. Maybe turn on the TV and have a look at the pictures. They make your statements out to be quite false, to be quite honest. Look, I think the majority of Victorians see this for what it is. They're sick to the back teeth of this sort of behaviour, this sort of rubbish from these groups. If you're so peaceful, if you're just trying to make your peaceful point, why are you coming with bags of railway ballast? Why are you throwing bottles with glass shards in them? Why are you throwing fruit, eggs, projectiles at the police? Why are you burning things in the streets, rubbish bins, effigies of police? Serious? Do those actions match those words or commitments? It's utter rubbish. And we should start calling this out for what it is, to be quite frank. These people should have no credibility in our society. None whatsoever. And we should all stop, governments included, facilitating their bad behaviour by pandering to them with our language.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne Gatt or whatever, he's always speaking on the police sides. Obviously, he's from the Police Association. I've seen him say some ridiculous things as well during the COVID era. He always takes the police side. So, take it with a bit of grain of salt. But I think on this particular occasion, there's evidence that we can see, and he's right. They did have the effigies of police. They had the rocks. You can't really dispute that or argue against that. We got one of my super fans watching, Guido Fawkes. Let's all bag Cruikshank. Mate, I can see all your comments coming through, Guido, but whatever you say, man, I don't care. Thank you for hate watching. Thanks for helping the algorithm. You always comment on my posts, and it's great. I see people interacting with your comments sometime on my other posts, so thank you for helping with the algorithm for me. I appreciate it. All right, so I'm gonna get to your comments. I will get to the super chat about Vietnam, the Vietnam War. God, is complete. I understand you did a super chat, mate, but it's kind of not on topic, and I don't want to go into a discussion about the Vietnam War when I'm talking about the streets of Melbourne with the rocks being thrown and the fires being set and things like this. Yes, there's an element of chaos in our city of Melbourne that maybe parallels a small fraction of the scenes maybe from the past in terms of the chaos. But I don't think it really matches up with what we're discussing right now, man. So at the end, I'll try to... I know. Everyone's saying Ishan Chanda is super... I think this is the same person that is trolling me. Yeah. Then they're saying that I scammed him as well. I read the super chat. I'm not going to speak about the Vietnam War as I'm speaking about these things. But at the end, I'll speak about my views on the Vietnam War. All right, let's see. I had something else lined up as well. So this is because there's lots of elements to this protest, right? So the counter protest. So we had the far left wing. We also had the Aboriginal movement here in Australia as well that opposes Australia in the sense of the March for Australia message. They were protesting as well. So this is some of footage from that from Box 4, who does a very good job.
All of the sea is drowning us in the law of the land. And fascism and apartheid and racism now in our country. Australia is living a lie.
We've got a blockade, Raz.
That's why we're marching. For the genocide that is taking place for the tribal societies and the First Nations people still in their sovereignty in this land.
And so we're bringing our law today, and there's that saying, take it to the streets. Well, I think it's safe to say all this side run the streets, not the Nazis. They're never going to be welcome to country anywhere they go. And we need to stand together.
I don't think the Nazis particularly care about being welcome to country, but let's continue.
Is the shield. We are not the far left militant. We are heart warriors, and we're bringing law, and they can't handle it, so they label us as activists and they label us as troublemakers. But I'm a heart warrior. I'm a cultural song woman, and they can't fucking touch us. So, Kinta Pungu, love is the shield. Come with us. Let's go.
Sister, I'm giving you orders to tell your troops to out of the way for us, go that way. Yeah, we're not about restrictions, we're not in COVID. Okay. We're giving you orders.
You've got to give us the same rights as the other
march. We're giving you orders.
Give us the same rights as the other march. We're going forward. Look backwards.
Anybody get that on camera?
Now, I mean, like they're saying that this was a shove. I don't know exactly what happened. I'll just replay that there, what happened. Let's go back. People have said he deserves an Oscar. I don't know. You can't see the full... You can't see if he was kicked or if he was just touched slightly and he fell backwards. Because... I don't know, guys. I saw the hand there. Just watch. I'm just going to watch this again. I might slow it down. Can we slow it down on this? Playback speed. Oh, yeah? Is that backwards? Come on. Come on. I mean, if that was what it was, the hand... It's like the cop was using the force. I don't think he even touched him, really. It's just so dramatic. I feel bad laughing as well because he's an older gentleman, but obviously when you look at that footage, I'll just play it one more time for those that might have missed it. The shove. Super slow-mo here. It was an elbow, someone's saying. Okay. I don't know. Unless he kicked him and he just lost his footing. I don't know. Someone saying the other cop shoved. Okay. All right, that will be disputed, but yeah, that was a super slow replay. I do feel bad. For some reason, the comments have stopped coming through on my end where I can put it on the screen. I don't know what's going on there. There is a massive I don't know if you guys have seen. There's a massive worldwide outage that's impacting. I don't even think I wasn't able to use the platform actually a little bit before this. If you follow anything to do with online tech, there was a massive outage in Amazon AWS. So a lot of the apps that we use the cloud, AWS, Amazon, they provide a service. So it's not just the shopping that we do on Amazon. They have a lot of different things which they have their hands in. And one of them is in providing the infrastructure for the data services, really, for a lot of the apps that we use. And they had a massive global outage impacting so many apps. And this is the frightening thing. I'm deviating a little bit. This is a frightening thing about the global kind of centralized digital future that we are living in, because when one of these services goes down, everything stops functioning. So that's what's happening. So I think that's why the comments aren't coming through on my end for whatever weird reason. It's just stopped. I can see it coming on the screen there, so I'll try to read it from there. I've got one more super chat here that came through before it went down. This is from X Sweetie, who says Melbourne is Gotham City. I agree with you. It does feel like I'm living in Gotham City when we see the crimes that are happening in the city of Melbourne, and it's a shame. Like it's a beautiful city. I watched a YouTube video just today, like someone that's traveled here and they've just filmed like all these nice things of Melbourne with Parisian music in the background and shots of trams. We've got shots of the old architecture, and it doesn't show any of the other crazy stuff that's happening in our city. So just the city itself, and obviously the shopping and the coffee, all these kind of things, right? Maybe a bit too expensive, some would say, but it is not. It is a nice city, and it's an interesting city, and it's something unique about Melbourne for sure. I do think it's a very, very good city that beyond the functioning of it, that just kind of has elements of it that would make it a good city. But what is actually happening in the city of Melbourne right now, like if you're a tourist and you rock up in Melbourne and you don't know anything and you've just seen like these nice travel videos about how great Melbourne is, and you come and you got like these, crazy protesters running around, burning things, throwing rocks at police, and you're here for a couple of weeks, and every week you go out in the city of Melbourne, it's like this. I think your opinion and your views would change about the city of Melbourne. So it's really hard to hide what's wrong with our city at the moment. That's probably the best way to put it, what I'm trying to say. But let's have a look at actually going back to Antifa. Let's have a look at these terrorists and the things that they've gotten up to. So one of the things I wanted to show was obviously that, they do love burning the Australian flag. So one of the things that they were writing on the ground was abolish Australia, death to Australia. Very peaceful, of course, mostly peaceful messaging. And then Oopsies says, Oopsies, he's burning the Australian flag. So, I mean, what do you say about this movement that completely saying that they're the peace-loving people, that they're there to fight for everyone's rights and to stop racism, and at the same time, they are, doing these acts of violence. It's very obvious that there is this extremist element in this group. So I'm going to see if I can bring up a chat window separately, right? Bear with me as this network goes down. If I can bring up a chat screen and share that screen separately so I can get your comments up on the screen. All right, I think I can do it. Let me just see. Are you going to watch me live, do a live production where I bring something in? All right, let's have a look. I'll bring it onto this main screen. Let's have a look. Let's edit my layout. There we go. Can you guys see that coming through? Just so I can read any super chats that come through. Look at that technology. It's a bit too big now. It's gonna add some opacity to that. Make it blend in. Let's add a border as well. Look at that. All right. Add some corners. It should defund the ABC because they're charging us a lot of money to do this kind of thing. All right, let's keep going. So we've got a super chat here from Brittany. Thank you, Brittany, just for the support. I appreciate it. Let's bring all this down a little bit. And we've got a super chat here from Versin Geotrix. Was it a leader of the Gauls? Notice Aboriginals and pro-Palestinian leftists have their nationalist flags, also the extremist Antifa flags. That's correct. It's all about burning the Australian flag. So, yeah, I mean, it's despicable scenes. I hate seeing this. Obviously, someone that loves this country, I hate seeing this. But this group, and this is some horrendous videos of people laughing while this is happening, and waving the Palestinian flag as well. There's other just protesters just kind of taking photos of it like it's a highlight of their day. Actually, ABC News is talking about it. Let's switch to ABC News. What's this one? This is live.
CBD is safe.
Yesterday, frustrations spilled over.
Melbourne has had a gutful.
Rocks that police say were thrown at officers presented to the press. Today, police released a photo of the injury sustained by one of two officers hit by a glass bottle.
When is enough enough? When is the Premier not just going to call it out, but act and get rid of this on our streets?
The Premier's adamant yesterday's violence signalled an escalation.
What we saw yesterday was a very different pattern of behaviour. It was violent, it was unacceptable, it's not tolerated.
I've got to be really clear, we have seen this before.
Police and the government condemned the anti-racism protesters who were in the city to oppose an anti-immigration rally, but counter-protest organisers say police deployed violence, injuring activists.
The reality is the police used those weapons to force pro-human protesters out of the city to help facilitate a hate march through the streets of Melbourne.
I just got to pause that there because that sounds awfully a lot like the same voice that we heard speaking on 3AW. I think that's her. Look, I don't know for sure, but it sounds awfully like that individual, that voice I just heard, and the things that she's saying.
I denounce fascism, I denounce racism, I denounce the violence
It's definitely sounding like her now.
of the police.
And nobody believes you. You have no credibility. Maybe turn on the TV and have a look at the pictures. They make your statements out to be quite false.
The Police Association wants to see funding for more protective equipment to shield officers from projectiles and is again calling for the introduction of a protest permit system, like in New South Wales.
And we have seen positive, constructive engagement in other states as a result of regulation like this.
The Premier has rejected those calls. Alexandra Alvaro, ABC News, Melbourne.
Private health group HealthScope is still trying to find a buyer after collapsing into receivership in May. If it can't, it's flagged a surprising and alternative plan to staff, which would...
All right, it's enough ABC. Someone keeps asking about Italians. But yeah, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. Obviously, there's been some solutions, which is, you just heard that on the ABC report. They're talking about introducing protest permits potentially, like they've kept mentioning that, but there's been a bit of resistance to that. I think even by the Chief Commissioner of Police. The Victorian government doesn't seem too interested in that particular route as well. We've seen it being used in New South Wales, and I believe in Adelaide as well, that they have a permit system. I'm in two minds about this kind of permit system. I believe people should be able to protest whenever they want to protest, but we also have obligations. In terms of the way that we protest, it has to be peaceful. It has to be done in a way that doesn't interfere with other people. To the extent of it becoming a nuisance. Now, you may argue that sometimes protest would be ignored if it did not, block roads and do the. If it didn't cause an inconvenience, you would say that protest would be meaningless. And there is some bit of truth to that. Like, you do want to get people's attention, but when you're looking at things like protesting for 2 years straight, weekly protests, and impacting businesses, impacting others that want to use facilities in the city, that want to come into the city on a regular basis, it brings up a whole bunch of issues around, as a society, what the broader impacts of that are. And I think that's what we're grappling with here in Victoria and in Melbourne. But, I fully support people's right to protest. And I saw that during the COVID times, just how important that right is. And you don't want to be in a position where the government ultimately has authority to control protests in a manner which is, to just their benefit. That's what you're worried about when you hear things like a permit system. Now, in New South Wales, you may argue that, it goes to the courts and the courts decide, and that kind of, leads to a more balanced outcome because, the court system is a part of the three branches in our system, and it kind of provides a judicial judge type verdict on whether something's allowed or not. It's interesting. The police were also saying that they want to have more access to more protective gear. I heard a lot of people today on the radio when I was listening to 3AW say that they want to have water cannons, the police to have water cannons. Again, there's a balance here between militarizing the police to the extent of the weapons that they use against members of the public, because we have seen police misuse those type of weapons in the past, as well as then maintaining public order and keeping police safe. So it is a lot of it is a balancing act. And unfortunately in Victoria, like someone said in the super chat before, it is like Gotham City. We got like rampant crime everywhere as well. We have people running around with machetes. We have crazed protesters and junkies that run up to randoms and stab them and run away. So it's a crazy place. And how do you find a balance in a place like that? So that's kind of what we're grappling with as Victorians. So yeah, let me know your thoughts. I'm going to read your comments on the screen as they pop up, because obviously the comments aren't working that great, and I'll probably wrap up in the next 15-20 minutes. But I don't know. I can't seem to bring up the comments on the screen anymore. I can bring up some of your old comments, but the new ones stopped coming through into my system. So I think it's something to do with a lot of these services aren't working properly. Someone says water cannons are the perfect thing for the police to have access to. Someone just loves Dan Bilzerian on this. Bring in the ADF code practice for when they go to Palestine. I don't want to see the military used against the public to control protests. That's when you're really in trouble, when you have to have the military come on board with that. Ishan Chan, yes, your super chat about the Vietnam War. What exactly about the Vietnam War on my views do you want to have as it relates to Australia or the West? Do you think it was a justified war by the Americans, really? Is that what you're asking me? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. So let me know, clarify that maybe, because Conservative says, why do I have to wrap up so early? I'm wrapping up earlier today, guys, because at 1:30 a.m. I will be back on the live stream bringing you Albanese's visit to the White House with President Donald J. Trump, with Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia, and possibly Avi Yemeni as well jumping in. We'll bring you that live stream. Yeah, what is happening? Is there some? I know there's some issue between Cambodia and Vietnam recently, but if you're talking about the Vietnam War, right? I think there's a lot of issues that came out of that war. Australia's role obviously is it's questionable as well, but we were kind of going in there with our allies at the time. We have since facilitated a lot of refugees from Vietnam, and they're a vibrant part of our Australian community today. I think they're very hardworking people that have contributed to Australia, and in many different ways. But I don't know exactly what context you're asking me that question in. Yeah, I hope AWS services all come up soon so everything works smoothly. Tika says Ishan Chand deserves to get nothing for a stupid question. I hope Big Don saw the protest. There is a video. I'll play that with Joel today at 1:30, which is there was a plea from Shallow Chal, I believe that's his username that he uses online, talking directly to President Trump from the people of Australia about the issues that we're facing. Rukshan, give Ishan Chand his $2 back. Mate, it's no problem for me to give $2 back. I get $7,000 per post. Didn't you know? Rukshan, you got to admit Andrew Tate has been good for masculinity. See, he says things which are, there's some truth to the things that he says, but the way he says those things, I think does a great disservice to those messages being more widely accepted. I mean, there's a lot of people saying the exact same things he said, but he just says it in such a undignified way sometimes, and you might be like, oh, well, that's the way you got to cut through to certain people. But I don't believe in that. I think you can have those kind of discussions in a way which is more palatable. And you may be like, oh, Rukshan, it sounds like you have a lot of soy in your milk when you're talking like this. But, we're talking about reaching out to children. We're talking about women who are our mothers, daughters, grandmothers, and the degrading way that he talks sometimes about these individual groups, I think is, it's not something necessarily, especially as a Christian, that I could engage with. And I know that he's at times gone to different faiths and maybe he views the world in a different way. I don't know. But yeah, I don't necessarily agree with that. Penny says, very hardworking people, Vietnamese are beautiful people too. Yeah, Vietnamese people are very hardworking. I mean, they just put their heads down and work. That's what I've noticed anyway. I grew up in the Southeast. Springvale was very close to me. And I also had an office later on in life near Richmond. So I had a lot of interactions with Vietnamese people growing up and even at school. Like any community, they have their issues, of course. But overall, they're very industrious and hardworking. And to think that a lot of them came as refugees and have managed to really build good lives for themselves and their children in this country is amazing. And they have very good families and community units. Hey, Aussie stuff for Aussies. Hey, mate, thanks for joining in this live stream. Let's make your chats bigger as well. Let's make your chats bigger because we've got a few more minutes and I'm going to stay on this before I turn the stream off, but the chat thing's not working. So what we're going to do is we're going to make your chats bigger. Let's have a look. There you go. That's better, I think. Yeah. Ishan says, was the war justified? What was the real reason for it? Man, I'm not really an expert in that field. I do know my history a little bit, and I do know bits and pieces about the Vietnam War. But just to go into a discussion about whether it was justified or not, I would be kind of making up assumptions and views on that particular topic. But yeah, I mean, definitely during that time, I can say in terms of the American mindset, the Western mindset, and the encroachment that they saw by the Soviets, they saw that as a real problem. Whether people like Henry Kissinger and he's like use certain circumstances to advance certain Western causes, the same kind of things that we discussed today when we look at other regions and other wars. It's possible. I mean, those kind of discussions, I believe, are justified if that's kind of what you're asking. But I don't know enough to make a declaration for either or. But I broadly do support the West, and even if that includes supporting the West in particular theaters of war, I'm not ashamed to do that. Yeah. Tika says, I hope Trump gives Albo a new nickname that goes viral. I really hope so as well, that he gives Albo a nickname. I think there's going to be some good moments that come out of tonight's or tomorrow morning's meeting between Albo and Trump. Rook, do you think Andrew Tate is as rich as he is? I don't think so. He wouldn't be doing all the crypto scams if he was that well off. I don't know. Maybe that's what makes him rich. He wouldn't be doing the pump fund scams. He wouldn't be doing the Solana coin scams. And I was very active in that space for a little bit. And I remember when some of his coins came out, and then he started just pushing like random crap, and then he was trading and picking coins, and it was just like weird. Obviously, he has a lot of time because he was holed up in Romania at that time, but there is a scammy kind of. He gives me Indian call center vibes, and probably Andrew Tate wouldn't appreciate that, but he gives me like high end Indian call center vibes. We are live streaming Trump and Albo at 1:30 a.m. So definitely watch out for that. Molly says, I hope Trump makes Albo look like the true idiot that he is. We've got another super chat here. Let me just bring that one up. This is from Queety. Let's see. Queety says, do you think Trump will get Albo's name wrong? Do you think Trump will get Albo's name wrong? I mean, that would be hilarious how he pronounces his name, because I know other times when Trump has spoken about Albanese, he'll say like the Australian leader. It's like he doesn't even know his name. I'm a massive fan. Someone's asking me about Solana blockchain. I'm a massive fan. I kind of was a massive fan of Solana and the blockchain, and I loved trading meme coins and doing those things. The market's pretty weird at the moment. I've stepped away from it for a few months now, since it kind of went downhill, especially after Pump Fund did their whole launch. It was a bit weird after that. But no, like it's a lot of fun. I love that world, but it's good to kind of walk away from it for a little bit. I don't know who this. You guys asking me about Logan Paul, Dan Bilzerian. Yeah, I don't know much about Logan Paul. Like, he was just not. I didn't grow up in that era to kind of be watching those guys growing up. But yeah, I know he's very popular with a certain demographic. I don't know if he still is, but he was for a bit. And he does his whole fighting thing, and they have Prime. He needs to show him a Medicare card. I mean, if Albo pulls out a Medicare card, I don't know. If Albo mentions to Trump that he grew up in community housing, I mean, that would be the icing on the cake. I can't think of anything else. William H. says Pump Fund is cancer. Yeah, I mean, look, it's become a bit exploitative. The promise of these platforms, they've been exploited, and it's just full of scammers now. Yeah, it's just scammers. Do you think Ethereum will hit 10K? Yeah, I mean, what's it sitting at now? Maybe I should do like live trading. What do you guys think? Towards the end of my shows, I should do live meme coin trading for fun, because I'd actually do that. That might be interesting, right? So Ethereum is at 6,000 AUD. When I first ran into Ethereum and got Ethereum, it was around $900, I think, or that was 900 US, so about 500 AUD maybe back then. So do I think it can hit 10K? I don't know. Yeah, maybe. $4,000 at the moment. Rukshan coin. Guys, if you guys are watching this and you're wondering what's going on with all this stuff, I have been involved in many CTOs and pump fund projects and working in the background. I've even led CTOs. So I know exactly what this space is, and I'm not a fan of it right now, so I'm staying the hell away at the moment. I'm having a lot of fun reading your comments, guys, but I think next 10:37 in 3 minutes we're going to wrap up. But thank you everyone for joining in. I hope you've enjoyed today. Not the usual thing that I do on Rukshan On X. We've just focused on one topic, and that was the March for Australia. And I spent a lot of time going through the media coverage because I thought it was important to see how the media has covered the March for Australia and just see the propaganda that they put out there and the reasons that perhaps politicians don't want to touch far left-wing violence. Now, I've very openly said that Antifa should be investigated. And I know it's very loosely, like a loose type of organization. And, you know, it's not maybe even an organization. I get how people are framing this. But there is a rise of left-wing violence that should be investigated. DML says Brad Batten is a weak loser. Please do a segment on cloud prevent strategy. Wouldn't it be nice if the world was chocolate? Thanks, Treya. Nice to see you, mate. I already answered about Vietnam. Antifa sucks, yeah. Guys, 2 more minutes. I'll keep reading your comments. What? You're going to do live trading on your 7K Facebook post money? That is actually a great use of the 7K that I get per post that I get, is to just dump it into meme coins and, play Pump It Up in the background and just watch that, watch it go up. So live stream Melbourne time will be 1:30 a.m. Is Queensland 1 hour behind? Who's worse on the work right? I don't know. What did I have for dinner? This is going to sound very predictable, but I did have curry. I had rice with like a beef curry and what else? Rice, beef curry, and like beans or whatever. Something like that. Peas. Queensland is 10 years behind. I feel like Conversus and a few of these other guys are the same people that just like having fun with the comments. Who's worse in the work right in Vietnam? Guys, I'm having so much fun that I kind of don't want to go off and I want to go onto Pump Fund and start trading a coin just for fun, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you for joining on. You can find me on X at The Real Rukshan, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as well, or on my website, realrukshan.com. Again, thank you for joining in this show. It's a very casual show, as you can see, and I spent a lot of time reading comments and having fun with you guys. So thank you for the comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you for those of you that have done super chats. Maybe I'll go do some more research on Vietnam so I can answer more questions on Vietnam. I seem to getting asked on these shows. I've really enjoyed your company tonight. I will be back in a few hours, in the early hours in the morning, with Joel Jamal from Turning Point Australia and Avi Yemeni from Rebel News. And we are going to be watching the that's President Donald J. Trump, Albanese meeting in the Oval Office. They're going to meet at 9 a.m., I believe, in US time. So that's around 2 a.m. here in Melbourne time in Australia. There's going to be an official welcoming of Albanese. Then he's going to walk into the Oval Office. They're going to sit down. There's going to be about a 30-minute press pack that they're going to do there where, you know, they kind of sit on those 2 chairs. Trump and Albanese talk to each other and the press gets to ask questions. And then they're going to walk into a luncheon. So whatever's being streamed at that time, we will be bringing you that. And then we'll obviously have commentary, your comments if everything's working at the time. And, you know, we'll have a conversation. So if you're up, you know, if you're going to go to sleep, you're totally fine. That's a normal thing to do on a weeknight. But if you're up at 1:30 a.m. Would love you guys to join us on that stream. So keep an eye out on my X, Facebook, or YouTube. That'll be on there. Yeah, I'll ask Avi about the Vietnam War for sure. For sure. All right, guys. Have a good night. I've had a lot of fun. See you all next time.